Decision-making in the modern world is something that's increasingly litigated and contested. One really good example of that is in the context of dementia, Alzheimer's, and so on, where you have individuals who have steadily diminishing capacity. Those are individuals often who are accustomed to having made decisions for themselves in their lives about where to live, what to do with their finances, and so on, how to conduct themselves. But increasingly, they're in a situation where they can't make those decisions for themselves. Those decisions really come up with increasing pressure in their situations, and the courts often are called upon to make judgment calls about how those things are to be decided. So you've got a situation where somebody needs to decide where to live or who to live with, how to deal with their finances, and the question is going to arise, does this person have the capacity to make a decision for themselves or to judge autonomously is the way we would put it. That's a kind of characteristics decision situation. It comes up in all kinds of contexts, particularly in mental health, but not just there. That's part of the legal landscape now. It's not going to go away. Every country in one form or another has that kind of legislation. But you've also, particularly in the West, now got a separate sort of legal tradition, which is really centered around autonomy, self-determination, human rights. In the UK, there's some landmark cases in the 1990s that are really centered around this idea. People have a right to refuse medical treatment. Famous case in England, says that's an absolute right. You have an absolute right to refuse treatment for any reason, rational or irrational, or for no reason at all. But you only enjoy that absolute right if you have the capacity to determine yourself, to make decisions for yourself. So that's the condition, that's the catch, in a way. For us, we think so much in terms of individual autonomy. But I don't think we have to go very far to recognize this ideal of a different kind of autonomy, a collective autonomy. I had some friends when I was a student who were trying to organize this expedition in the Amazon. And it was two university societies. One was the Micro-Light Flying Society, these tiny little planes, and one was the Whitewater Rafting Society. And they had this mad idea that they were going to, that's a tributary of the Amazon that had never been ridden before in whitewater rafting, and had never really been mapped out. And so they had this joint expedition where the microlight flyers would fly ahead and chart out the route and find where you need to portage and so on, and the boaters would go down the rivers. They absolutely needed one another. Neither of them could do it themselves. The boaters didn't know where it was safe to go, and the microlight flyers couldn't carry their own fuel. So there you've got this situation where people are absolutely interdependent. Now, if you imagine in that situation somebody halfway down the river saying, I want to be autonomous, right? You think, wait a second, you joined the wrong crew, right? Individual autonomy would be a crazy idea in that kind of context. So in a way, we're all in that same situation. We are incredibly interdependent. We depend upon others. So there's something a little bit odd about this, in a way, very familiar ideal that individuals should be self-determining. In a way, it's more natural to think about being self-determining only in the context of a certain kind of communities. So I think there's a real need for us to kind of go back to first principles about this. And I think we have to question our assumption that individual autonomy per se is always a value. In fact, I think that what we need to think about is better to think about kind of decision communities. We're making decisions where those decisions are embedded in certain kinds of communities. Some of those communities foster individual autonomy. Some of those communities undermine individual autonomy, and so one's got to think about how can we best organize our affairs, whether that's in the police station, in the psychiatric facility, whether that's in schools, in housing associations, and so on. How can we organize our relations with one another so that we can realize some of these ideals of individual autonomy?